Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today to discuss Highfield and the Rowland Acres development. I really appreciate your time.
Carlin, thank you for inviting us on the podcast and having us on today.
Yeah,
Thanks, Carlin.
you betcha. So I'm wondering, just to get the ball rolling, if you guys could give us a little bit of a background as to the lands that we're talking about today, and I guess currently the ownership position of the two areas that we're talking about, and maybe a little bit of a history of the land as well.
All right. Well, Dennis, I'll take that one if that's okay. So,
Great.
Highfield Stock Farm, as it was originally known, we purchased the land in 2004 from a group called Misculents, Denardi's. And Denardi's acquired the land in the mid 1990s after it had gone bankrupt and was kind of out there in a CCAA process, right? Initially, the lands that Highfield is on, the equestrian center and the cattle facility, was built in 1979, 1980 by Bob Elliott. Bob Elliott had the Alberta government at the time wanted to get into the exotic cattle operation and funded a lot of these facilities and the build of these facilities to expropriate the exotic cattle operation. In 1989, exotic cattle operation went absolutely bankrupt. It went from point A to point B. And as a result, Highfield and Bob had gone bankrupt and went into courts at CCAA. Interestingly, Bob Elliott owned all the land on the south side of 547 and the east side of Highway 2, and Bob was the proponent and developer of Silvertip, the other piece of land, which is Rowland. So when we started down this road working with the county and were asked by the county to kind of go forward with an application, they requested that we join with the Rowland family and include the Rowland piece of dirt in our application. The Rowlands homesteaded that piece way back to 1893, and interestingly enough, had a subdivision application for that particular piece approved in 1912, which they subsequently in 1960 and change, the subdivision application was taken off the record. So as a result of the request of the county, we moved forward with the Rowlands and the Rowland family and included them in our application. At some point in time, our agreement is hopefully we will be in a position where we partner with Rowland on the eventual build of that dirt.
Okay. So did I hear you say that the county approached you guys on making an application?
Well, no, it was. There was a regional water strategy that was in place at the time, Carlin, and this whole area they were looking for development. So we proposed to them that we could be part of the regional water solution and that we wanted to do an ASP, and they in turn asked us for a greater area than just the Highfield lands.
Okay.
That was a century ago. That was 2014. So
for sure.
Not recent.
So you have an agreement in principle, I guess, with Rowland to purchase if these approvals go through. Is that?
Yes, if they do, and hopefully the first level of approval is the ASP. This is a farming community, and we have a handshake agreement with them. So.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. And what's the land use currently of both lands of Rowland and Highfield?
The Rowland is 100% agriculture. It's currently farmed.
Mm-hmm.
And the Highfield land, a portion of it is farmed, but there is also an equestrian facility and a number of houses on the Highfield property.
Okay. And would those current buildings, acreages, farm yards, I guess, be taking out once we start moving forward?
Well, first of all, it's a long way down the road. Carlin.
Yes.
It's not included in our current land use application that Foothills is hearing on the 18th of June. But eventually the equestrian facility and all the surrounding houses, the houses would be hopefully subdivided at some point in time, put on potable water and wastewater. and form part of the community. And the equestrian facility eventually will be dedicated to the Water Homeowners Association and turned over to the community as an amenity. So
Right.
that would be the 4 barns and the arena.
Right. And how many acres of land are we talking about? Like the Rowland Acres, how many acres are there?
Rowland is approximately 278, and Highfield, sorry, I have to look it up, unfortunately.
Sure. No, that's okay.
Just give me a sec here. Highfield, we're talking total in the plan area of 905 acres.
905 acres. Okay. Yeah. And Adrian, how do you fit into Highfield Investment Group?
My dad started a company called Theologian back a long time ago when I was a kid, and it was a investment company he had while he did other things such as owning Gino windows and doors or Gino building products. He was an eclectic purchaser of land, and so my dad started the company, well, a century, almost 50 years ago next year. And eventually it morphed when we bought Highfield Stock Farm. It morphed into Highfield Investment Group later on. So the companies are engaged. We did a bunch of estate planning. I am the president of Highfield Investment Group currently. And the company is owned by myself and my sister and my 2 brothers.
Okay. And Dennis, we haven't heard from you. How do you fit into the whole scope of things?
So good question. I've been a longtime friend of Adrian's. How I met Adrian was through hockey.
Okay.
I coached his boy. So we've been on and off friends for like 20 years, meaning.
Oh, so it's gone off a few times? Yeah.
It has. When my coaching didn't make up where he thought it should be, maybe it was off a bit. But actually, I got to know Adrian's wife originally. She was our manager.
Okay.
So that's how it started. He was always in development. I was always in development. I've been doing this for probably 20 years plus, land development. And Adrian said, can you give me a hand and help me out? So I just come on just to give him a hand.
Right.
As a consultant.
Okay.
To, provide some direction and bounce ideas off of.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when we look at there's a whole bunch of acronyms, I guess we can say. We say the UPA, so units per acre, basically set at 0.94 units per acre. Has the Highfield been determined as to how many units per acre you guys are looking at putting in?
So, Carlin, we'll just go back to Rowland if we could to start. So 0.94 acres, that's what we're proposing to Foothills County and Council. At the end of the day, Council may come back and say that's incredibly low for the location. That's not what we want. That's not our vision. So, we can propose that, but it's ultimately Council's decision on the density of that piece. The area structure plan, as approved by Council, dictated that the overall plan area would be 2.5 to 5 units per acre. So as a result of Rowland being lower than the average and a smaller piece of land, we need more units per acre to meet our minimum density requirement on Highfield or on the overall plan area. So only greater than 2.5, around 3 units per acre to meet the minimum in the area structure. Again, that is going to be Council's decision, Carlin. So if you look at our land use application, we do include a range in there, but what we're asking Council to do is to approve the land use districts and to allow or to tell us or dictate to us what our density or what they would like to see for density on the Highfield piece.
Right. And there's certainly is a little bit of kickback. Now it seems like I talked to Paul a few weeks ago on the podcast, and I said to him, you go on the Foothills County website and it looks like the due diligence was done properly according to the website in regards to letting people know what was transpiring here. But it seems like as we get further and further into it, it seems like the momentum for the people that are, against what you guys are proposing is gaining some momentum. Is that what you guys feel, or do you feel that you have some positive feedback from residents in the area?
In our opinion, Carlin, we wouldn't have got this far if we didn't have some positive feedback from residents in the area. We've sat down, and as long ago as 2014, 2016, we put a working group together with Raven Crest Landowners Association. The current president, Greg, was actually one of the participants on that working committee. So the plans that you see in front of you today have evolved from that working committee, morphed and changed as required through our approval process. And I can't comment on who's opposed, who's not. I think there's a lot of loud voices that are opposed to it, but I don't know if they necessarily represent the majority. Quite honestly, I really can't tell you. I have my sense of it, but it's just my opinion, and it doesn't really count. Dennis, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always positive and negative out of quite a few people out there. Some like they knew the development was coming. They wanted to, I would say, look for a fair units per acre, as you alluded to earlier, Carlin. And when we listened to the ASP that we went through and the final readings, there was definitely a strong sense of they wanted some certainty on density on the Rowland piece. And as you know, we came back with what we thought was a fair density at 0.94 UPA. When we go across, we call the Foothills County, and we look at density of other areas that are in the county approved, developing, or developed, the 0.94 on the Rowland Acres, you compare that to Artesia, they're at like 1.98. Heritage Crossing, another development that just got approved, that's at 4.16. Serenity's at probably 2.9, and Heritage Point is like 0.78 or 0.8. So we thought that was a fair density that we would propose to council and to the abutting property owners in Rowland. So is there momentum against density that I would say is lower than most developments that have been approved here in Foothills in the most recent time? I would argue it's probably right in where it should be in terms of fairness.
Mm-hmm.
So we did listen to the residents in Ravencrest for sure, and Silvertip. I would say if we were to hit the 3 UPA, that would put us right in, like I say, that range of Heritage Crossing, Serenity, Artesia. So I would think that sometimes the quiet minority or majority never voice their opinion, but as we all know, there's a public process to it, and we'll see what comes out of that on the 18th, 19th.
So with the UPA of 0.94, that would not be profitable for you to pursue anything at Highfield if the UPA was basically at 0.94.
With the infrastructure requirements in the county, Carlin, we'd have to run the pro forma number one to see if it is profitable at, in your opinion, 1 unit per acre. I can't tell you that without really running the pro forma. They're dictating a lot to us. We have to twin the bridge, right? We have to supply water to the water and wastewater treatment plant. We'll need lift stations, and the infrastructure requirements for these developments are incredible, right? The county doesn't build the roads. The landowner, the proponent, the builder is building all the roads. So there's a lot of requirements, and we'll see if that's council's direction. We'll have to evaluate it and see where we go from there. I can't say yes, I can't say no without running a pro forma.
Right. So at the meeting, at the open house, you were very clear that you are not the developer.
No, there's a connotation, Carlin. A lot of times we see, and maybe it comes from movies and that type of thing, where they say the developer comes in. A lot of times the developer isn't the landowner. The developer is a third-party group who comes in and really pushes density and pushes the development of the land. There's a distinction here. Ourselves and Rowland, we own the land, and we will do the right thing for the land because we are a landowner. And to paint us as just your typical developer who, just is motivated by profits is probably incorrect. Our intent is to do what's right for the land. We've owned the land for, in our case, over 20 years. In Rowland's case, over 130 years. So we're going to do what's right for the land.
Yeah, Carlin, I don't know, Adrian, maybe you could speak to how long you've lived on the property, because you're right up against Silvertip with
Yeah,
your
I've been there
house,
21
your old house.
years since we bought it in December of 2004.
Right. Yeah, like because you also did mention that you feel that this development is uh, the best stewardship of the land to move forward with something like this.
I think it's the best stewardship for the county, Carlin, because one-off parcels, country residential, in its current format is not sustainable long-term. There is no other piece in the county that has an at-grade interchange, access to transportation, and access or will have access to a water and wastewater treatment plant that whether the Foothills residents like it or not, they are paying for. I think you corrected me when I said, or Paul corrected me when at the open house when I said it was 35 million. He says, no, it's ballooned up to 46 million. Somebody, and the intent here is to have connections into the water and wastewater treatment plant to make sure that it is viable and the taxpayers' money that's being spent to facilitate that development or the build of it is repaid in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, like I guess that point I think is a little bit difficult in my mind because the county, it seems like, because we got three players here. We got Highfield Investment Group, we got you guys, we got the Foothills County, and then we have the group that's really trying to fight what's going on, right? They just don't want this in their backyard. And some of those people aren't even really directly affected by this development.
Such as Paul.
Correct. Yes. To say that the county, it seems like the county may have put the cart before the horse inside of putting all this money into the water treatment facility and not have approvals yet for these developments, right? And now to say that, because I think, Dennis, you said this at the meeting, that the county needs to find ways to pay for the water treatment, the $41 million that they put into the water treatment center, right?
Yeah, that's correct, Carlin. Not need to find. We just need to get the utilization up so they can have payback to it. And if you remember, Adrian was speaking about industrial growth and the limited water usage that goes along with that growth. So in order to cover, I would say, bring on the industrial growth at a reasonable price, the water usage, in my mind, comes from the residential. It doesn't come from the industrial. So when we spoke about that, the residential obviously will use 3-4 times what an industrial user would use. Adrian, you spoke about the number of units of water that they use in industrial because you do 12 million square feet of it in Balzac.
Yeah, 10 million square feet in Balzac. And I gave an example, Carlin, we built the Rona Lowe's distribution facility at 1.24 million square feet on 80 acres. Their average use per day is less than 8 cubes of water, right?
And what would an average house be?
Well, average house is, God, I only know liters per day. So it's
For sure.
70 liters per day.
70 liters. Okay.
Somewhere in that area. Right?
Yeah.
So, but going back to your question, did the county do it wrong? We can't second guess the county.
Sure.
I can tell you there's a lot of precedent out there. For example, Rocky View County committed and spent $58 million on water and wastewater treatment plant and servicing for the Balzac corridor, and then subsequently pushed servicing down to Conrich. And I can tell you they've done very well in getting payback on that if you look at the development in the Balzac area.
Right. So do you guys think that I haven't talked to the Foothills County yet, but do you think maybe they're maybe doing a bad job pitching this project in regards to what a project like this could mean for the county?
Is that their job?
I don't know.
I don't believe it is their job.
But you said they came to you to get the ball rolling.
If you listen to the public hearing, I think there was some very good points made from from Delilah Miller, right, where she talked about how much land is consumed by typical country residential and why having this cluster development in one specific area makes a lot of sense for the county. So, the public hearing is the forum for the county actually to voice the opinion and voice the opinion of council. And if you listen to the numerous times we were in council for our area structure plan, there were some great points made and why the county felt it was appropriate, and we were fortunate enough to have a positive vote when it came to approving it. I struggle, and I ask you a question.
Sure.
What is the expectation of people? What are residents like Paul? What is his expectation? Does he think Foothills County should come and sit with every resident in Foothills County and have a discussion about what they want for their county?
I think, and I'm, because I have been talking a lot to Paul, and I think he would probably reference back to the municipal development plan, and
which was superseded by the growth management studies, which was superseded by eventually the regional plan, which was superseded again and again, right?
And sorry, I do feel like I'm entering into territory that I don't know enough about, but does that come back to the Calgary Metropolitan Regional Board and their proposals as well? Because there was some things that they proposed, and then they there was a third party that didn't recommend this to go through.
If it came back to the Calgary Metropolitan Regional Board, we wouldn't be talking about 2.5 to 5 units per acre. We'd be talking 8 to 12 units per acre. So when they say, well, the third party didn't recommend it to the CMRB, why didn't they recommend it? Because our density was too low. That's why they suggested refusal when it went to CMRB, because we didn't meet the guidelines and the density thresholds in the regional plan.
Mm-hmm.
And council were very specific sending us there asking for an exemption to those density thresholds. So to say, yeah, third party didn't recommend it, they're absolutely right. But they didn't recommend it because the plan we put in front of CMRB was for lower density than the CMRB wanted. And Dennis, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, well, all I'd say to that is Foothills Council made the motion to take the application forward to the CMRB. At the time, that application was sitting where it sits today, 2.5 to 5 UPA. When CMRB did their review, as Adrian just indicated, it came back with non-support. We think the density needs to be higher. At the CMRB hearing, mayors of all the that were part of that regional board voted in favor of Foothills' plan that they put forward, which was the 2.5 to 5, with the exception of one mayor, and it came back to council, Foothills Council, with that recommendation of approval from CMRB. Now people say, well, maybe we shouldn't have taken it to CMRB. I'm like, well, your council decided to do that. Foothills Council did. There was 3 specific members of council that wanted it to go.
Mm-hmm.
And when it went there, it, as we all know at that time, everybody had a vote. And Calgary came through with, they supported the Foothills Council for a made in Foothills solution. Not a made in Calgary or a made in CMRB solution, because it didn't meet the CMRB. It met what Foothills wanted, which was 2.5 to 5 UPA. And I think when we look back at that, whether it went to CMRB or didn't go to CMRB, it was still a made in Foothills solution at 2.5 to 5 UPA.
And so, Carlin, I want to go back to your other comment that
Sure.
Maybe there wasn't enough engagement. I think that's what you're alluding to. I can tell you in the entirety that this project has been out there and been publicized, we've had the websites and we've had all of that and our engagements, 7 open houses. Our phone numbers have been out there on the front line for our neighbors to see. You know how many people have called us? 0. Even after the open house. How many calls we had? 0. We had emails. We offered to meet with people. They said, no, we don't want to meet with you. we'll fight you through email. We want to engage with our neighbors. We sat down with whoever would take the meetings and did prior to going to the ASPs. And as I alluded to earlier, we had a workshop with the neighbors to determine what it looks like. We can only do so much. I can't force people to pick up the phone and have a conversation. I can't force people to sit down with us.
Yeah, for sure. So let's say acreage owner, in Silvertip, you guys come, you sit down with me. Are you guys in a position where you are able to work with the residents and maybe change? Because I think their biggest thing, it all comes back to the UPA, right?
So
Units per acre.
So 0.94 units per acre is not good enough?
Sorry, that, obviously is for the Rowland, but when we hear for the Highfield at 2.5 to 5, I think that's what kind of turns their temperature up. And again, can I please say this? I live in Okotoks. And you know what I mean? Like there's certain things that will affect, no doubt, people from Okotoks, but it's really at arm's length, right? I think it's the 2.5 to 5 and the different numbers that have been floating around, right? I think once the county and you guys can nail down a number that you can present to people that are, the numbers once the approvals go through. But if people were to engage you, are you guys in a position where you'd be able to work and change and make things work for the entire community?
No one's engaged us on the units per acre in Highfield. The conversations we had have all been around whenever we were in a position or had conversations were the density in Rowland. We don't want to see 2.5 to 5 units per acre on Rowland. So based off that conversation, we responded in kind, and hence you see a plan in front of you for Rowland of 0.94 units per acre.
That's great. So that says a lot about you guys. So because is that part of, sorry to cut you off, but was that part of the landowner's desire as well? The previous landowner or the landowner that currently owns it? But yes.
The current landowners?
Yes. Sorry.
The current landowners just want to see stewardship of their land, and they do want to respect their neighbors. First and foremost, Ravencrest wouldn't have access today and wouldn't be a development today if it wasn't for the Rowlands. That access road they have off 547 was fully dedicated by the Rowland family without compensation to Harvey Trimble when he developed it, right? So, maybe the Rowlands want a little more density, but the fact is we have to listen to what Ravencrest and Silvertip have said about the Rowland piece of land, and that's what we did.
Okay. So if the public was to reach out to you guys would engage them, but right now nobody's reached out to meet with you. Are they thinking that the route they are going to go is maybe go and talk to the county and fight it with the county? Yeah. Because even just scrolling on the Facebook page this afternoon, I think the county's starting to engage them a little bit more. I don't know if you've seen that, where the county's actually responding to some of their questions, which I think is great that there's a little bit of engagement going on there back and forth.
No, sorry, we have not looked at the Facebook page.
For sure. Yeah. No, it's certainly, I guess when it comes down to it, we see things happen all the time. Like you see Shawnee Slopes and that golf course go, and people are upset with the change in the land designations and things changing. I think where, some of them would always reference and come back to is they just feel that it is. And I don't think the residents are surprised that this land is going to be developed. I think they're surprised just with the density. And I think that's what they always come back to. I think they're nervous. They're nervous with townhomes. They're nervous with, condo complexes or whatever. And then infrastructure, hospitals, walk-in clinics, schools, right? Because that's where Okotoks is going to start getting affected by it as well. Mm-hmm. And I do think that with the, the proposed annex land of Okotoks. And, and I guess it's just my opinion that if you're being a steward of the land, and like so many people have moved to Okotoks, and then once you're in, you want the population to stay. You don't want to see it grow. You don't want to see growth, and but if you move out to the country, and they've moved out there for a specific reason of seeking, quiet and, as much as possible. And I know that the county has also put up some dark sky things as well, kind of alluding to the dark skies. And that's part of the county's part of their municipal development plan is keeping the skies dark. That really starts changing when you do put a community of potentially 16,000 people. Now, what if
I
the
don't
stars?
know where that number came from, but okay.
What's your guys' number?
First of all, we don't deal with population numbers. We deal with UPA, right?
Okay.
You can do the math at 2.5, units per acre. I think I did the math. It gets for our total areas maybe 6,000. Initially, we thought it would be around the 4,700. But it's changed because of council direction. And but to answer your question, did Highfield substantially change when Silvertip grew and built? No. When Sheldon Kennedy did the 6 additional lots at Silvertip on the highway across on the south end of Silvertip, did that materially change the enjoyment of Silvertip and the current Silvertip residents? When Ravencrest built out on the gravel pit, did that change Rowland? Right? And to what you said, people are afraid of the unknown. They have the worst case scenario that noisy neighbor A is going to move in there and their world is going to be upside down. I think that's a fallacy to a certain extent, right? Progress happens. You live in Okotoks. When Wedderburn or Darcy Ranch grew out, did that affect them? Maybe, I don't know. But that's a lot more dense at what's
8
Wedderburn?
UPA.
8 UPA.
For sure.
Right? It's 3 times what you see there. So to say my life is going to change, I don't necessarily think that that's fair.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's just the messaging. Like Adrian, at that open house, I talked to you, and there's always that. If the market turns or things don't sell, just how things can change in regards to the UPA, right? That's what I picked up from the meeting that you were saying, that if the economy goes in the tank and all of a sudden they need, higher density building, that could be a possibility for the area as well. And that happens lots, right? That happens in, Air Ranch, for example, in Okotoks, where they started building these, bigger lots. But then as they got closer and closer to finishing, they wanted to wrap things up. They went higher density.
Was that the developers of Air Ranch, or was that the city of Okotoks saying we need more density? I don't know. I would speculate it could go the other way too, Carlin. You could do your first phase of development and find you have no market and never develop another piece of dirt, and it remains agriculture. It could go that way too. My crystal ball, unfortunately, has been broken for a couple years.
For sure. Yeah, nobody knows, right?
If you can tell me, please do.
Right.
Then we won't waste our time.
Yeah.
Well, and I think if we could get into just maybe even there was common concern that we seen when we showed up to our final hearing on the ASP on farmland. How much farmland is Foothills? Don't get rid of farmland. And yet, they come out with a study, Foothills County did, that showed Foothills County generally is 92% agricultural land. They're sitting in over 800,000 acres of zoned agricultural land. And everybody's worried about taking out agricultural land. But the pieces that sit on Silvertip and Ravencrest were all at one time agricultural land as well. So when I look at the change in, at least the report I was looking at, in 5 years, Foothills has only went from 808,560 acres to down to 800 and $742. They went up.
Mhm.
So I don't see where this save the farmland comment comes from when the two properties that are joining us, our neighbors, sat on zoned land for agricultural, changed to residential. So it was good for them. But yet when we do the same thing, and I look at 92% of this Foothills County is agricultural, I think that's a bit of a fallacy on the save the farmland to me, because you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. You want the farmland, but you developed on farmland. We
And
haven't lost a lot of agricultural land in Foothills.
Yeah, and I could see certainly the acreage owners saying that for sure, and I certainly do see your point, absolutely. But it always comes back again to where the Foothills County is, because I know that it's very difficult to turn land over, and I don't think anybody's denying that they knew that eventually this land was going to be developed. It's way too close to Highway 2, and it's the development. I guess you could argue that a lot of those landowners, those acreage owners, do have goats or a cow or a horse, or they're experiencing things that someone can't experience in the city with chickens, pigs, farm animals, bigger gardens. You could certainly argue that some of them potentially could be good stewards of the land by the way that they're taking care of their acreage as well, right?
And even Rowland at almost 1 acre lots is 43,000 square feet of dirt.
Yes.
Right. And your average house is 1,200. They got 41,000 square feet of residual land, and they could be good stewards too.
Right.
I'm not denying that. They could have their chicken coop. I don't know if that's a policy in the county. They could have their goats. They could build a bigger garden. Those things still exist on 1 acre land as they do on 2 acres of land.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you guys would want to say? Let's say that I am an acreage owner that's very upset that this is going to be transpiring in my backyard over the next X amount of years once things are all approved. What are the closing words that you would say to someone like me that's thinking my value is going to be lost in my home? My peace and quiet is going to be gone. What would you guys say?
Dan, go first.
I actually think what I would say to them, come and chat with us. Let us know what it is that's concerning you greatly, because I wouldn't mind having those one-on-one conversations. Because I think right now we've definitely heard from the Ravencrest group, Silvertip. I'd welcome them. Like Adrian said before, our phone number, we're not hiding.
Yeah.
If you want to come tell us what you'd like, we can obviously chat through it, just like we did, I think, in arriving at the 0.94 on the Ravencrest and Silvertip. I'd love to sit down with them, but we haven't heard from them. Like I say, we've heard from them in the open house, but to sit down one-on-one with a group of people, we'd welcome that.
Yeah, like I think there was a board member there from Silvertip, right? And I think she was I think she was just a new board member. I think she's being brought up to speed as to what was going on. Is that correct, Adrian? Were you in that conversation?
Yeah. Sorry, I can't remember her name. She did write a email to us with her concerns on behalf of that, and we responded and that type of thing. It was actually not. It was more positive than negative for Carlin.
So what I'm hearing is, if people come and they start approaching you, that you guys are open to conversations and potentially adapting your plans, or your plans pretty solid?
Well, it depends what the constraint or the criticism is, Carlin. We did a lot of adaption on the Rowland piece as a result of listening to Ravencrest. Like Ross Henderson had a concern about where that pond was and where the ER was in the north west corner. And we took that into consideration, and totally when our plan and our lotting plan went into place, we developed that. They had concern about where the berm was and where the regional pathway was abutting their properties. That was addressed and changed, and what it looked like and the style of trees that were put in there. So all those things were in consideration on the Rowland dirt, and I don't think we change that when it comes to Highfield.
Right.
We have met with our neighbors on 112th, and we had that conversation with them as well. So
Perfect. Anything else?
No,
I'd like to thank you for giving us a chance here to talk to you about it. And I'm hoping people watch the podcast and reach out. I do.
Yeah, and we're in council on the 18th, and we'll see how it goes.
For sure. Are you guys talking at that? Do you get to make a little spiel in front of council?
It's very procedural, so I think we have 20 minutes after administration goes, and then the neighbors who speak for and against have an opportunity, and then go from there. So it's very limited what we get to say and when.
Perfect. Gentlemen, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Carlin.
Thank you.